Hello and welcome to the Mindful Men podcast, a show inspiring men to be mindful about their lives. Each week, we'll dive into a range of topics that matter to men and hear from everyday people doing extraordinary things. So if you love the show, please give it a 5-star rating and share it with your mates. Now, before we get into this week's episode, please note that some of the content may trigger you. And if this happens, please reach out to your support networks. It's really important. If you can't get enough of Mindful Men, head over to our website. It's www.mindful-men.com.au. Find the show notes and the links to our socials there. But for now, sit back, relax, and let's get mindful. G'day guys, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Men podcast. I'm your host, Simon Rennie, and today we're getting mindful about the loss of a child and the support that Red Nose can provide to families, in particular dads who are in the bereavement process. And joining me for today's discussion, I've got Chris Wood from Brisbane, Queensland. How you going, Chris?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Simon. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I'm very grateful for it, and to represent my family and other bereaved parents.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. We are going to be talking about a pretty heavy topic today. So if people are triggered by the loss of a child or a loved one more generally, feel free to skip this episode. That's more than okay. In the show notes, we will be putting a hotline number for Red Nose Grief and Loss Support Line. If you are listening to this and you do need a bit of support from Red Nose Grief and Loss Support Line, that'd be really good to check that out. But also check in with your usual support networks. It's really important to do that after you maybe have consumed some content that may be triggering to you. So Chris, to introduce you, you are from Brizzy and I'm up from the sunny coast. So hello from up the Bruce Highway. To describe you've written that you're a husband and a bereaved father to your son Liam, and we're going to be talking about Liam today, who passed away at 1 day old due to complications in utero. Is Liam your only child?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, we've had 4 pregnancies. 2 ended in miscarriage. Liam was a neonatal death, and then we had to terminate a pregnancy at the start of this year at about 10 weeks.
Wow. So you've had quite a lot going on in your life and trying to get pregnant for starters, but also, the birth process as well. So I can imagine this is going to get pretty heavy. I'm really looking forward to it and really thankful, though, right off the bat, that you're coming on to share your story. So let's start with that. What is your story? And talk us through both Liam's life and also, the lead up towards that, because I understand maybe you had some difficulty getting pregnant.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. So my wife and I got married in 2015. So we just hit 8 years a couple of days ago. Long story short, we didn't start trying straight away. We've had probably a 5 to 6 year fertility struggle. We fell pregnant initially at about 11 months and miscarried that pregnancy. And then a couple of years went on, no luck. A failed round of IVF, 2 failed rounds of IUI, which is the step before IVF for those people that don't know. And then, we fell pregnant, our second round of IVF towards the end of 2021. Yeah, we fell pregnant with twins in that pregnancy, and then miscarried one of the twins at about 9 weeks again, which was the start of 22. And then, had Liam. Liam was born at 30 weeks gestation in June last year. And he had developed, during the pregnancy, he had developed a lung condition called pulmonary hyperplasia. So what that is basically is the lungs haven't developed as much as what they should. And basically he was born and his lungs were fucked, and put it bluntly, and he died at 1 day old.
Wow, that's huge. To go through all those rounds, you talked about IVF. What's the other one? You touched on something before IVF. What's that treatment?
Yeah, it's IUI. I can't remember what it stands for, but basically they get the father's sperm when the female is ovulating. They inject the sperm, and basically it sort of, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's a step before IVF.
Yeah, and how long does that process take? So the IVF, I know that process takes quite a while as well. So you're going through this for quite a period. Is it also a costly exercise to do as well?
Yeah, it is. It's not cheap. I'm very good at selective hearing and selective memory sort of issues. So I just, when it comes to the cost of things, I just, I don't want to know about it. So put that beyond. But yeah, it's not cheap, mate. It was a long, very long process, and seeing a fertility specialist and going through all the testing sort of processes, it's very draining for both my wife and I.
Yeah. And so when the twins were conceived, I imagine you would have felt pretty over the moon when you got that news, and all of a sudden you're going to
Yeah,
have
but
twins. You're like, oh, geez, what's going to happen here?
oh, like no joke. Like when we went from 5 years of fertility issues to pregnant with twins, I was thinking, fuck, typical. Things can never be straightforward, but it was an interesting feeling. At the time, I had a coffee shop as well, and so we basically started the process to try and sell that straight away because, I was working probably at least 60 hours a week minimum, and having twins and doing that sort of workload is not feasible.
Yeah, and I can imagine it would have come with a huge sense of relief to conceive twins, but then to have that world, thrown upside down as well through the process. How did you cope through that?
I didn't cope very well, just struggled really. But you make do with what you've got. And when we miscarried the first twin, we were still both very hopeful and, optimistic and everything. But it definitely awakens you to the reality that, pregnancy is fucking hard for a lot of people. And there is so much, trauma and everything around that. And I think when people have a smooth 9 months and then the baby's born with no issues, yeah, it's a very rare thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And how was your wife coping through all this as well? How, like, what was the difference in things that you were noticing in her?
She wasn't coping very well either. It was just very much a day by day type situation. All right, we wake up today. Oh yeah, there's no issues. Oh, it's going to be a good day. To be honest, it makes you more present of like what's around you and what you're going through and everything like that. Yeah, we didn't cope very well though.
Yeah, and did you have like certain people that you could draw from to get a bit of support? Like, were you talking to any medical practitioners, therapists, family? What was your support networks like?
Yeah, family was a massive support. Like my mum and sister were very helpful for me, and then they're in a state, they're in New South Wales, and Beth's family are in New South Wales as well. She's got two sisters that live in Brisbane, pretty close to us, and they were very helpful for both of us. And yeah, so we definitely relied on family a lot and a couple of like close friends. But after the miscarriage, after the first twin, we miscarried that. Liam's pregnancy was still progressing fine and everything. So we're just really hopeful of that and just dealing with whatever came from that.
Wow. And what about the medical practitioners as well? Like, how are they supporting you through both the loss of the first twin and then through to Liam's birth?
We had a fertility specialist at the time, and we were seeing her. She was private. We were seeing her through the first trimester and then pretty much went into the public system. And, being a high risk pregnancy, pretty much went into the hospital system at about 15 or 16 weeks, which is not uncommon, but we were having Beth was having like weekly appointments and weekly scans, and we had a lot of peace of mind there. And then, yeah, we found out at the 20-week scan that there was no fluid, and yeah, basically her water had broke at 16 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, so from the 20-week scan, things got a hell of a lot more complicated and a lot more doom and gloom. Then from there, we went into the hospital system like proper full time.
Yeah. And so were you staying in the hospital, were you? Or
Beth was in hospital for the last 6 weeks of the pregnancy. She developed like signs of infection at about 24 weeks. And basically, we were told at the 20-week scan that she could go into labor at any point in time. So, yeah, from 24 weeks to 30 weeks when he was born, she was in hospital full time.
yeah. And did she go into labour or was it induced?
No, she had a cord prolapse. So what that means is that the cord has come out first, and it's very, very dangerous. And it happened when she was in hospital. And basically, if she was not in hospital, like he would have been dead, like pretty much. It was 28 minutes from her cord prolapsing to him being born via emergency cesarean. he was potentially without oxygen for that period. Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine that would have been one of the longest 28 minutes of your life.
Yeah. I was at home actually, and I was watching the football, the 5:30 game. It was a Saturday night. I was watching the rugby league. Got a call from her phone. We were just talking. We were talking about 20 minutes earlier, and I thought it was quite strange that she was calling. And so I answered, and it was a midwife just saying, "Oh, you need to get to the hospital ASAP. That's going in for an emergency cesarean." And fuck, I was freaking. Just got straight in the car and got there in about 15 minutes to Royal Brisbane. And yeah, had to wait outside.
Had to wait outside. You couldn't even go in for the birth.
Yeah, like she had already gone in, and they had started the procedure and everything, the cesarean. And yeah, I just waited out in recovery.
And how quickly could you get in and see both your partner and Liam?
So I didn't see Liam until he was born at 7:33, and I saw him probably for the first time at about 8:45. He was very sick. They had to work on him 4 times in the first hour. So what I mean by that is like bring him back, give him CPR. Beth lost a lot of blood as well. She lost almost double the amount that they would want in an emergency Caesar. So she was quite sick as well and in a hell of a lot of pain. Saw her first. I was at recovery when she came back after the procedure. And then, yeah.
Yeah, what was going through your mind as you're waiting outside and then hearing what happened?
I was freaking out. You automatically think the worst. And I knew that Liam was very sick, but, with the amount of blood that Beth had lost, she was very unwell as well. So, I was automatically thinking the worst, and I was just freaking out. I was undescribable, really. Like, my son's potentially about to die, and, there's a chance that my wife might die as well.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. It's really hard to explain.
I mean, I'm a dad of 2, and standing there in the delivery, both my son was an emergency Caesar, my daughter was a planned Caesar, and I felt like the most helpless person in the room. I couldn't do anything. I didn't know what to say or feel or anything like that. I can imagine you not even being in the room, sitting in the waiting room, would have just been traumatizing almost.
Yeah, it was. I was just pacing up and down, and fuck, I remember it so vividly. And like, I was the only one there. Like, a midwife sort of came out. She was trying to sort of calm me down and everything. And I was like, I just want to be left alone type thing. And a young guy came out. It was like, for me, that his football team had won the grand final. Like, he was so excited. And like, I really struggled to be around him and like be near him. And it turned out that his partner had been through, horrific circumstances, and they had just had a, emergency cesarean minutes before as well. And unbeknownst to me, but like, it was just, he was over the moon, and like, literally my world was fucking crumbling like in front of me. I thought, fuck, what's this guy's fucking go? Like, I was so I was so worked up about it. But yeah, it's just one of those things that that you remember.
So talk us through Liam's day one. How did you go through that? What happened, and what's some of the fond things that you remember of him?
He had massive hands and feet, and he had Beth's small ears and button nose. They're the type of things that I remembered, straight off the bat. So he was born at 7:33 on Saturday, the 11th of June. The first doctor that I spoke to within that first hour told me, she's like, look, it'll be a good result if he can survive through the night. He's very, very unwell, and his lungs functioning basically, and we're doing everything that we can to keep him alive. But he's really struggling to breathe and to function. And then he just slowly started to get a little bit better, and he was slowly starting to sort of, like, his heart rate and his blood pressure and everything was starting to get better. We went to bed. We stayed with him until probably about 4:00 Sunday morning. Went and had a couple of hours sleep, and then went back downstairs to the NICU probably at about 7:30 on Sunday morning. It was a little bit better, but by no means was he out of the blue. and then he wasn't responding. His lungs just weren't responding. They were too damaged to they just weren't benefiting from all the meds and that he was being pumped with. And yeah, he started to go downhill at about 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, and yeah, he died at 5:30 Sunday night.
Yeah. It was at that 2 o'clock period that you started to think, oh, something's not quite going right here, or did you have that kind of gut feeling that something was going to happen?
Well, I kind of like, I'm a simple cat, and the doctors and the midwives were talking to us, in medical sort of terms, and I wasn't really understanding a lot of it, but my gauge of how he was going was determined on how many people were sort of in the room and how many people were around him. When I first saw him on the Saturday night, there was probably at least 10 to 15 medical people, like, going everywhere, like doing different things. And so over the next 24 hours, my gauge of how things were going was determined on how many medical people were around. And one of the midwives tried to explain to me, the things that I've got to look out for on the monitor, what they're hoping his blood pressure would get to and everything like that. So, I was just watching their body language and everything.
Yeah, I can imagine also, not just for you and your partner, but also for the medical staff having to deal with that type of thing would have been pretty full on as well. What were you noticing in their facials expressions and their emotions too?
Just, probably the frustration maybe that, things weren't going to plan and things weren't going well. Yeah, that was probably the main thing. Like, they were great. I had a bit of a run-in with the main doctor the night before, but that was just purely both our emotions were just running hot. But other than that, the care that we received, in the NICU was faultless. They were doing their best.
Yeah. And so what happened next? Like, I'm going to be honest with you, like I haven't lost a child. So like, yeah, talk us through for those who are wondering, like, well, yeah, what happens next? Did you have some time with him to cuddle him and kiss him and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, we did. We had as much time as we wanted after he died. He died in my arms at 5:30 on the Sunday, and we spent time with him and we washed him on Sunday night. And probably one of the hardest things that we've ever done was had to leave him there that night after he, died. Days after, we stayed in the hospital until the Wednesday. And yeah, we came home, and for any bereaved parent or bereaved parent of an infant or a baby, the hardest thing is leaving the hospital without that child. And yeah, that was hell.
And so at what point did Red Nose come into things? I know they have been supporting you.
We saw a social worker in the hospital a couple of days after he had died, and Red Nose offer a hospital to home program. They've got a grief counsellor that will come and see you at your house, that helps you navigate that those first few months, first 3 to 6 months after your loss, because it's incredibly messy and just don't know what to do. The lady that came to our place, she had lost twins as well, so she knew the extent to what we were feeling, and like the highs of being pregnant with twins, and then the lows of losing both of them are they're extreme. She was a great help. She was a great help for us.
Yeah. And did you do that as a couple? Did you have some time for you? Because there is this concept in the medical world around maternal gatekeeping, and a lot of the focus is on the mum and the bub, which is, rightly so, but not so much on the dads, and the dads can be left behind. So did you feel that you were getting the right support?
I definitely got the right support from Red Nose. In other aspects, I was definitely left behind, and it's one of the things that I'm really passionate about, trying to bridge the gap, is the fact that fathers, are very, or the non-birthing partner is very not dismissed, but they're not a priority. And like for me, Beth got maternity leave. She had maternity leave, so she went back to work, part time around sort of October-ish, and just transitioned nicely, like smoothly-ish, back into the workforce from in the later half of last year. And for me, I was back at work doing 6 days a week after 3 weeks, and I fucking hated it. I hated being around people. I was self-employed, but yeah, I really struggled to be around people, and to have to fake how I was feeling and everything like that. And it took me 6 psychologists to get in to see one. And, in my wife's situation, the first psychologist that she contacted, boom, appointments.
Mm.
That's good for her, and that's good for the mother. But there's also another parent at home that's not getting anywhere near the same level of, medical treatment as they should be.
Yeah. So being back at work that quickly, I can imagine that would have impacted the people around you, like your customers and your other staff as well. Talk us through that.
Yeah, it was difficult. For me, I'm a terrible liar, so fuck, if I'm feeling blue, like it's pretty obvious. And I just couldn't fake it. Well, I could, but I just really didn't want to. I didn't want to be doing that. And if someone asked me, "Oh, how are you?" Yeah, I'm all right. Like I'm all right. That was my answer. And I was far from all right. So I really struggled. Yeah, I struggled.
Yeah. And you talked about going to see a psychologist and taking a bit of time to get into one and I guess find the right fit as well, because often we get into a therapist that's not the right fit. What kind of other supports were you looking for as well? I know you got the Bereaved Dads Touch Footy team. Like, can you talk us through a bit about that and what other supports are around?
To be honest, apart from like Sansa, connected to Red Nose as well. They've got monthly support groups for bereaved parents, and then we had Red Nose as well, like the hospital to home program. But yeah, other than that, I didn't really have a lot, and I was getting very frustrated. And probably towards the end of September, early October, I hit my rock bottom, and for a brief period had suicidal thoughts and everything like that. Yeah, and just purely out of frustration, yeah, I started to think about ways that I could sort of just create what I thought I needed. I knew a couple of other bereaved dads just through my shop community. And towards the end of last year, sort of early this year, I just put a couple of feelers out to see if there were any other guys that, wanted to make a touch football team. And we play on a Tuesday night at White Hill in Camp Hill, in a men's comp, in a social comp. And yeah, it's good for us to get together and, talk a bit of shit and talk about all of life's struggles. And we go to the pub probably once a month and just, yeah, have a couple of beers and debrief.
Yeah. Did you find it hard to recruit players for the team, or was it pretty much everyone's like, yeah, get me in there?
Yeah, it was difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. And, I guess just not everyone's interested in touch football, and that's fine. Yeah, so it was a struggle. We've got 9 guys in the team, and with various things in life, sometimes it can be a struggle to get a couple of guys on the bench, but that's all right.
Reminds me of my old touch footy days. You're scrambling for numbers.
6 on 6. We played one game 4 on 4 for the first half of a game, and that was that was difficult.
How good has the support been around the footy team, though? Like, are the discussions really frank and fearless? Are they really supportive?
Yeah, they are. We all understand where the other guy's coming from. The first time we all got together, and I knew a couple of the guys separately, so it was a bit easier for me. But the first time we all met, we went to a pub in Holland Park. So you've essentially got 9 sort of strangers sitting around a table, but it was very natural, and we all just sort of told our story and different ways that things have happened, and it's been very beneficial for all of us. I think
Yeah.
definitely has been for me. I can only speak for myself, but it's definitely, being around them has definitely helped me a lot.
I can imagine there'd be some diverse ways of coping that have been brought up in those conversations. Are you happy to share some of the different ways that guys have coped through the loss of a child?
Exercise has definitely been a big one. One guy, and just different ways to honor their child. One guy runs, his daughter was stillborn early last year, and he runs 6Ks every day to honor and remember the 6 babies that are stillborn each day in Australia. That's fucking nuts. 6 babies are stillborn every day in our country, and like that's fuck, it shouldn't be happening. But that's one way that he honors his child and copes. Yeah, so exercise would probably be the main one.
Yeah. What's some of your go-tos? We talked about psychology, but what's some things that you do to just look after yourself?
I really enjoy walking my dog and just putting whatever music I want to listen to on and just, spending that time with her because, you work all day and then come home and I'm knackered. But for me, that's really important time, like just thinking time as well. I do a bit of swimming too. So again, just exercising is massive, very underrated. And like I know for me, I know as well, like I'll be further into a shithole if, when I stop exercising and when I'm drinking more and not eating very well. So it's just all those little 1% type things that they add up.
Does it take you much to recognize that you are sinking into a hole and you maybe not eating right, drinking too much, not exercising?
I'm very conscious of what I'm doing, but to be honest, sometimes I just don't care. I'm just like, fuck, whatever. And those holes can be hard to get out of. Yeah, but my wife's very supportive and she's very, very honest and very direct.
Yeah.
So that makes a massive difference.
I can imagine like something like this, and you've had multiple losses in trying to get pregnant. Are you talking about getting pregnant again, or have you drawn the line there?
No, we haven't drawn the line. We haven't really made a decision. We kind of go through different stages and different phases. The pregnancy in January that we had to terminate was very damaging to Beth's body. So that meant that, we couldn't try for 12 months. So that's just given us time to think and, process everything. So yeah, we're undecided what we're going to do in that regard.
Yeah. So how do you remember Liam? Like, what's Liam's legacy? You've got the Instagram page there. I'd love to hear a bit about this and what your plans are. Well, how do you remember him, and what's your plans for the future?
How my wife and I remember him, we go for a walk every Sunday at 5:30 together. If we're home, then we'll take Poppy, our dog. But Christmas Day last year fell on a Sunday, and 5:30 we went for a walk, and it's a bit of a tradition that we've decided to keep going. We scattered part of his ashes down at a little beach near Kingscliff, or in Kingscliff. So I go down there quite often to watch sunrise on weekend, and we've got our own ways. I've got his name and footprint tattooed on my forearm, and yeah. But any opportunity that I get to talk about him, I take with both hands because I feel like our children deserve it and they need it, and they need to be fought for. Yeah, so for me, I just want to help bereaved parents as much as I can, whether that's being vulnerable and telling our story. I started a petition as well, asking the federal government for change in a couple of things. So that helps me try and help other people. And I feel like, his life is not going to go in vain.
Yeah. What's the petition? Talk us through that.
So as it stands, the federal government makes a lump sum payment of $3,700 to parents of a stillborn baby, which is about 4 weeks at minimum wage. I'm asking them to scrap that and introduce an infant loss payment, which is from, anywhere from second trimester loss through to the first 12 months of life. And I'm asking for a lump sum of $10,000, which is 12 weeks at minimum wage. Say, for example, in my situation, we didn't have the financial means for me to have time off, but, I was back at work after 3 weeks. And as I said, I fucking hated it. And I really, really struggled. And 12 weeks would give that non-birthing partner an opportunity to grieve their loss privately, because a lot of people don't have the financial means to take time off. And, especially in like a lot of father type situations, if they're the primary breadwinner, they've got to go back to work very quickly after such a monumental loss. And it's just, I don't think that it's right.
Yeah. And often those dads are going back to work after a birth, and nothing happens, and they're missing out on all those, little milestones in those early days as well. And I can imagine. So you're self-employed?
Yeah, I'm not anymore. But at the time, I sold my business at the start of the year. I work in construction now.
But at the time, you were. If you didn't go to work, you didn't get paid.
Yeah, exactly. If the shop didn't open, then we weren't making money.
Is the petition still open and people can sign up to that if they're keen?
Yeah, they can. They can. I've got close to 500 signatures, and I was saying in another podcast, like that's not enough to get politicians' attention, but for people in our situation, and for that 500 people that have signed it, they're something that I've created has resonated with them, and they've signed it for a reason. So I'm gonna fight for as long as I can to try and bridge the gap between non-lost parents and lost parents. Because it is fucking huge. Like there is a river between the two sides, and people may not really know it. And I get that people don't necessarily want to talk about the baby that died because it's too confronting or everything like that, but it happens way more than what people know and realize. And there's a whole portion of society that struggles through it. And I just want to be that voice when I can, where and when I can, to share our story and try and bridge that gap.
Yeah, and I'm so thankful that you are. The whole idea of the Mindful Men podcast is to help guys to be mindful about what's going on in life in various facets and tune into, maybe be inspired by other people's stories and say maybe if they're struggling that they can open up about their stories too. So I'm really thankful that you've come on the show and being as vulnerable and open as you are, because that's the best way I think we can spread these awareness issues, but also encourage other guys to step up and get help as well, rather than go the opposite way.
Suffer silently. One thing that I'm really passionate about is I feel that men have to be a lot better at supporting other men. Women have so many more circles, especially in our situation. There's multiple podcasts for bereaved mothers, but there's not a whole lot available for bereaved fathers. And the whole, she'll be right type approach it's a thing of the past. From my experiences, she won't be right. The more you try and put it to the side, the more you're going to suffer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll grab the link for the petition off you as well. I want to put them in the show notes.
Yeah, sure,
We're going to put in the show notes a bit about Red Nose as well. Obviously, the Red Nose Grief and Loss Support Line, we'll have the phone number in there. For anyone who's listening and can't get to the show notes, that's 1300 308 307. But outside of that, if you're triggered more generally, please reach out to your support networks, whoever they are. Chris, I've really valued your time this morning. Thank you so much for coming on. There's one last question that I have for all of my guests, and it's a chance we do talk about some heavy stuff, so lighten the mood if we can, as best as we can, and it's to plug something that you're tuning into at the moment that's making you feel good, whether it's something you're watching or listening to, reading, self-care activity, whatever it is.
Ted Lasso.
Yeah,
I love Ted Lasso. For those that don't know, it's on Apple TV. Yeah, there's 3 seasons. Great show. We've watched it twice now, all the way through.
Yeah. Talk us through, for anyone who hasn't watched it, what's a typical episode look like, or what's the story?
Yeah, so it's about an EPL team, a Premier League team in the UK, and they've got an American coach. And basically, he was signed as like a bit of a G-up type thing. But yeah, it's really funny. There's so many good one-liners in it. Some really good characters as well. It's a real feel-good show as well.
Awesome. And who's your footy team? What's your footy team?
South.
Yeah, okay. I'm not from Queensland, so I'm an AFL supporter.
Oh,
so
right. Okay. Yeah, rugby league, die hard. And one of your episodes, Dane Weston, was probably my favourite episode. But yeah, I joined the Redcliffe Dolphins this year, and I love an underdog. And yeah, it was good to go to their home games and watch them and just have a local team to support. We live on the north side. So yeah, but South Sydney is my team.
Did you put South Sydney top on Liam when he came out? Did you do that dad thing?
No, he was too small. He was too small. We did buy a onesie actually, and still got it here. But yeah, I usually just put my jersey on my dog. She doesn't like it, but
too bad. Chris, thanks so much for coming on, mate. I really enjoyed our conversation, and have a great weekend, mate.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode, and I hope you got some value from it. If anything triggered your mental health today, please reach out to your support networks. Also, if you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your mates. For more from Mindful Men, you can check us out on Instagram and YouTube, and I'll throw the links to these pages in the show notes below. But until next time, stay mindful.